call this meeting to order. First order of business is allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
So we'll begin with public comment on agenda items. So do we have public comment on any agenda items out there? Tony?
I'm not sure if it's agenda. A while ago, I was talking about the 21st century going to housing. So I was trying to get more information on it. And our senators and representatives really aren't supplying anything. It's on the phone. And then the Chamber of Commerce, too. Nobody answers the phone in popular state and in D.C. Again, it sounds really good, really nice. The 21st century road to housing. You know, that doesn't apply to everybody. It's basically more HUD, welfare, grants, going to inner cities. And there's also one about rural housing, too. So it relates more to HUD. So I don't know if the zoning commission will see that, or find out how it affects our community.
If you find any more information, any links that we should be looking at.
Yeah, I'm trying to get actual lead to it, but then they give you something. The wonder things are screwed up. The titles are nice. I mean, you read this, what does it do for me? What does it do for my community? David McCormick is one page one day. He says this is going to make the community more control over their community. And nothing in here was says anything about it. So that one thing. One more thing, I guess, there's discussion on Holocaust for a while. Just for example, puppy hybrids.
Yeah.
That has no.
Yes.
It has the same needs. Not only there, I think because there's up there and a lot of plants. Is it necessary? I don't know. It looks nice. It looks like it keeps things in order instead of just driving into the neighborhood and driving a nice spot. So they are here, and I don't understand. I still don't understand why PennDOT refused to have over there around here. That has something to do with it. They are around. I hope they. I don't see any residents complaining about this. I'll be high. So go in. Feels like I spent $400,000 or $500,000 for a house.
And did you notice how we lined up the trees in the middle with the flagpole with the center of the clubhouse already smack in the next right? It's nice. Yeah.
But I don't know if we can use that as a blueprint to get any I wanted to get some work done by Lowe's on the improvement. So I was reading over the contract. It's like a 15-page contract. On the last paragraph, it said, if you don't agree on everything in this contract, do not sign it. That's the first contract I've ever seen that actually had that stipulation. And the zoning ordinance, and the zoning board put that in our ordinances.
Well, that would be more of a question for Michelle, but I would tend to think that that language isn't even necessary. That's more for people to help them be clear in what this is communicating. Because whether that's said or not, if you sign it, you agree to it.
Right.
So you don't have to say, don't sign if you don't agree.
Right.
Because that's implicit in the
We're just
signature.
being very, very obvious at Lowe's and make sure, but no.
But they actually, that's the first one I've ever seen. I said, well, I don't agree with anything. I don't want to sign it. So, then the zoning ordinances be set up as a contract. Basically, it is a contract.
Well, it's not.
It's the law.
It's a law. The contract is actually the developer's agreement. That's the contract that you have to adhere to, with respect to the developer and doing things. But the zoning is just, those are laws, they're not actually contracts.
Okay, so if they don't like it, they can come and,
Yeah, they can ask for variances, waivers, and a variety of remedies if they disagree with something in there, but it's not a contract. Other comments, Ron, you read something?
I was curious about the status of the data center ordinance.
We're gonna hold off on much discussion, we're not gonna be discussing that here tonight. I know that's gonna be discussed by the supervisors as to whether or not they have an interest in us pursuing that more aggressively. And once they decide a direction, then we will take the appropriate actions. But that's really where it stands at this point. Right?
Okay, real quick, regarding that speech. Anybody who has access to YouTube, I posted a town hall that was posted by Bigger Alliance Against Data Centers and Free River Shores Preservation Society hosted a town hall last night. It was 3 hours long. The first hour was a presentation. They had 3 guest speakers that have been involved with many of the data centers and other legislation in the state, as well as there was over 2 hours worth of comments and questions from residents and the public there. So I would highly suggest if you get a chance, go take a look at it. I know it's long, but it's really informative. One of the biggest things is the tunnel noise that we're concerned about, as well as the, there's mines, actually there's mine shafts down there where they're gonna be building all this. Tons of underground mine shafts, so everybody's worried about what that tunnel noise is gonna do to this mine shaft. So when it does come up, you know, take a look at that, it's on the east side.
Mike, do you have a comment?
Just to add about the data center discussion, you're right, supervisors have not, we have discussed amongst ourselves, we have an agenda posted for the next workshop. You're familiar with that, but they
Yeah.
forward that to you. So as just to inform the planning commission, you're on aware, we're shooting for an August 25th date. You guys can complete, well, we have to vote, obviously. We're going to do that at the next workshop. We have to have standalone data center plans completed by August 25th. And we also agreed, I'm not sure if I saw on the agenda, but we're going to go forward and advertise the name in September.
Wait a minute, what?
Advertise the name for the standalone ordinance in September. So that's what we're asking you. I'll speak for myself, I'm not going to lose it. But just to give you guys a heads up, we are trying to be aggressive on trying to make this. Which I think you guys have fairly close.
Yeah,
As you know, we've done a fair amount of work.
Yes.
Personally, I actually think that we don't have to present you something that's perfect. Because anything we get out there is gonna be a great first step. And we have the opportunity to fix it when it becomes pieces of the actual zoning and salvo as well. So I think we get something put together quickly, that's reasonable, get it in your hands, and then understand that, oh, you know what, maybe we should add this or change that, or we can fix that and go around and so.
But I just want to make the thing where we are shooting for, we're going to be voting up to approve the entire table in August 25th date.
We just are going to be talking about.
Timing wise, that's an amendment of the zoning ordinance, so if it's ready by August, all you're gonna be able to do then is move to refer it to Butler County Planning, back to this planning, and advertise for a public hearing, so,
That's what we're
okay.
shooting. Yes.
So just to do all that in August. Okay, to make that motion,
As quick as possible. Pardon?
just to make that motion, it's not like you're gonna be able to adopt anything.
Oh, no, we can't, you have to go through, but we can set a date for a public hearing.
Yes. Yep.
So that was in the original agenda plan. The original agenda was on the last day.
That recommendation of the solicitor.
The advertising date was in there?
She recommended, because she stated it was premature to be able to predict the dates.
Yeah, just because you can talk about it while you're talking about the date ordinance, but picking a date before you have a final one, I probably did say, yeah, I wouldn't do that yet. But you guys can push.
Yes, I would, we'll see. I just got a break, we discussed. Regardless, it's a minor.
Yeah, but you talk about it, you talk about your timeline, it's your workshop meeting.
We also talk about the moratorium, 180-day moratorium that we would vote as well.
And you know what that is, though.
I do know what that is. I think maybe there was some misunderstanding on the part of GM because you had said that you were doing your amendment. However,
Right, because it hasn't passed yet. House Bill 2496.
I'm talking about the moratorium, but you don't need to go to the House.
You're talking about under the MPC. Right, and everyone that's done that has done it via curative amendment.
Right. What is our limitation of that? I'm saying, what is our binding law range after time to do that?
Yeah, if you want to do a municipal curative amendment. Well, that wasn't a municipal, that was a,
Actually, if you look at, I'm checking, they held, it was a landowner curative amendment, I don't know how to sell those.
it was not municipal.
But
You could do that if you wanted to do the
replaced
municipal
it
cure.
with an alternate.
Yeah, but it was still landowner.
Okay, that's good.
Because that, yeah, we're going with landowner, so if you want to do it again,
Okay, excellent, because
Yeah.
thank you for, sorry about that.
Real quick, two other things they highly recommend the attorney last night was it should only be conditional use. It should not be by right, it should not be by this, by that. It should be done by conditional use. And there should be absolutely nothing in the ordinance that says by right. By right, as Bruce Township.
No, yeah,
gives you more control. I agree with you.
Yeah.
we would definitely do it as a conditional use, probably a conditional use in select zones anyway. Okay, yes, Tom?
This is a little late and maybe past your time, but is anybody familiar with the Indiana bat?
What?
Indiana bat?
Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Is
Is that condition, are they in possession of an EPA certified biologist report?
who?
Huh?
Is who in possession?
Of you?
We don't need to be.
So the developer.
The developer does, we're not the developer.
But the developer provide this report to you so that you know that you have it?
If it's within a season, there's a certain period of time, Tom will be able to answer this, but there's a certain period of time where
Was
the
there
studies have to
an EPA certified biologist report on the potential for presence of Indiana bat at the 321 Cary Highway site? Is there a report of that nature? Are you aware that they presented to you from the
So they presented a PNDI that presented the Indiana bat, and it was cleared from that from the U.S. Wildlife Service. So they provided that certificate.
You're in possession of that report,
Yes.
and it says that there's no potential.
It indicated that they were cleared to do development in that area because it was under 40 acres. Even though the Indiana bat may be present in this area, they were cleared and there were no restrictions on their development.
That's not according to what I'm reading from the Fish and Wildlife Department from the U.S. government. It's not restricting the lot size. In fact, it's talking about small lots. If you have the following trees, jaguar hickory, butternut hickory, butternut hickory, bignut hickory, other hickories, silver maple, sugar maple, red maple, green ash, white ash, eastern cottonwood, north oak, scarlet oak, black oak, white oak, chestnut oak, slippery elm, American elm, black forest, and other shagging bark trees that you have to leave at least 10% of the live canopy should be considered snag. And that there's to be no construction or disturbance between the only time you're allowed to do it is between November 15th and March 31st. 21st to November 14th, just so you know, disturbance of the land.
Yeah, that's correct. If it shows up not in his PDNI, is it?
PNDI was clear.
Yeah, that's
So
typically
this
the developer done that for
This
years.
can be produced, this report can be produced.
It's further submittal from the developer to the township.
The
Yeah.
question is, can you produce this report?
Yes. Developer submitted it.
I guess we'll get it on later on. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to administrative items. Bonnie, you had a couple comments?
So I wanted to make you aware, you do have a vacant seat, and there is currently one applicant for that seat. However, Chairman Kessler asked that we advertise for that seat to see if there were any other candidates. And he stated in the past there have been interviews done. So he would like to do that, and it will likely be at the next meeting where they'll discuss that.
Do you interview these candidates, Brian?
There is one, and off the top of my head, I do not recall them, but it is a
I
public.
remember Sylvia used to do that.
Yeah.
One additional thing, besides the Indiana bat, the salamander mussel, which is extremely,
We understand this, Tom, and it's not only that, there's also rattlesnakes and everything else in this list, and they're all covered by this report.
okay, and
Yep. Any other administrative items, Bonnie?
The only other one, Mike already mentioned, that the board does appear to want to direct the planning commission on the Madison ordinance.
And I would ask, I'm sorry, just if this board does authorize this and planning commission comes look, it'd be nice if we're gonna try to move quickly, that the solicitor's office has it as well before that 13th, whatever draft we're working on, so we could sort of chime in as well. We're working on them for lots of places.
Okay, minutes. Has the board had a chance to review the minutes for the May 26th, 2026 meeting? Do we have a second? All those in favor? Opposed? And then for the June 1st work session meeting. Any comments, corrections?
I move that those be approved.
Do we have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Since we have no new business on the agenda tonight, we're actually going to use this as a work session on the PRD ordinance. And we'll move into those discussions now. You've got a couple things, planning commission here. We got the previous, like 4 different documents we have in other places as well, plus what Tom gave us here tonight, which are 2 things. We'll get into them in a minute. The goal that we want to get to is making sure that we've got PRD ordinance in place that become a component of the actual zoning ordinance. When they basically become a chapter of the zoning ordinance as we get further into the zoning ordinance. But we might as well take this piece of it and we're going to work on it. Because it could be standalone as well if we need to, but nonetheless, we'll be incorporating it in. As a starting point, we're going to I recommend, I should say, we're going to start with the submission that Scheffler did back a few years ago, back in 21. Scheffler proposed the PRD ordinance, and in the sake of disclosure, the ordinance they presented was the ordinance I gave them, which was a modification of the Center Township ordinance that I wrote back in like 2018 or 2019, something like that. So, personally, I like the ordinance. I think it's relatively comprehensive, but I'll admit, when I wrote it for Center, it was geared to be very developer friendly. And what I mean by that is it didn't necessarily have conditions in it that could constrain or tighten it up the way we might want to do it. And the reason I say that is it was written essentially in Center Township so that Dublin Highlands could exist, is why we did it. And they knew that I was going to play by the rules and not try to circumvent or find loopholes. So we didn't worry about closing all the loopholes. Here, given that we don't know who the developer is and what's going to be done, I think it's imperative for us as a group to not just have a solid ordinance that allows reasonable use, but to make sure that when we write that, we don't leave loopholes in that a developer can go and take advantage of that we don't necessarily want. So I think the most important thing we can be doing here is looking at this not from what's in it, but what's missing from it. What do we need to put into the ordinance that is not covered? It's not covered here, not covered elsewhere. So that's essentially where I'd like to begin the discussion. Has anyone had a chance to, number one, refresh yourself in the ordinance?
Is this the first time we've covered this?
No. We've discussed this
Long time.
months and months.
November.
Is it November?
November? Okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
I thought we went pretty far with it. No?
We pulled a lot of things.
Oh,
We never
okay.
actually went anywhere.
I got you. I remember now.
We looked at a lot of different ordinances and sections. You never dove into it and said, okay, let's change this paragraph, include this paragraph.
Yeah, so I think the important part, the important part is what's missing. And I think as a template, this is a reasonable template. The other document that Tom gave us here is what the PRD ordinance in the township used to be before it was repealed. What I didn't like about township's old ordinance is it's actually very convoluted in terms of if you do this, you can get credit here, and if you do this, you get this kind of credit, and it was just a very jumbled matrix of things. I don't think it's necessary. I think you keep it simple.
I have one extra copy.
This is Center Township Public Bank.
Correct. Center Township.
And I think they just finalized theirs.
What?
We went through a couple of meetings.
Oh, unless they rewrote it.
Yeah.
No, the one,
Oh.
the one we reviewed back in 2018 or 19 or something like that. It's Center Township.
So this is the final.
The one you're looking at, was simply a modification of Center Township for language that I handed to Shell, or they handed to the township. It was just nothing ever happened. So I guess where I'd like to start is, I'd like to ask Tom, are there components of the township's old ordinance that we should be considering that aren't necessarily talked about in our current stuff?
I mean, the key components are what type of housing do you care if it's all one type of housing? Do you want a mixed development? Do you have a preference on one or the other? For example, if it's all townhomes, is that acceptable, or do you want to split between percentage of townhomes and a percentage of single families? Those are the things that I think are missing out of the ordinances of what do you want to see, or not see. And I can see we've had some where other townships will, in order to do this, you need different types of housing. So, 90 buildings are single family and 2 are duplex. I don't know that's a very attractive plan. So the question is there an advantage? And to me, it's not necessarily all single family. It's when you get into the multi-family homes, you want to limit those to a percentage, or limit those to areas so you can
have something that can mix, like Arden, for example, mixed townhomes and single family homes, and we kept them in an area that was a low percentage. Do you want to, do you like that? Do you want to mimic that? Do you want to, or doesn't it matter? I guess is the point.
Adams Township has what they call development models. And in their development models, they do exactly that. You use their, what they call small something development model. It has to have a certain mix of traditional lots, neighborhood lots, and suburban lots, I think is what it is. In theory, that's accomplishing some of what you want. But what in practice, I, as a developer, find a loophole. And what happened is I was building a duplex community, and I needed to have 3 product types. And the 3 product types had to be what they call traditional, neighborhood, and suburban. And the way they defined those 3 was based on lot size, lot width. Traditional was a little narrower, and neighborhood was a little bit wider, and suburban was a lot wider. So the way you accomplish that, it was terrible. It was a loophole, I'll admit it. The way I accomplished it was I simply went in and I took my duplex and I said, okay, this duplex is going to have a 10-foot sideline. The next duplex has a 12.5-foot sideline. It's going to be a suburban lot, which is a little wider. Nobody knows the difference. It was, so what I'm saying is I don't mind if we have something that has that, but I ended up building a whole community, because then I had one lot that I had to make a little bit bigger with the duplex to make it a suburban lot. And they're all duplexes. It was the same product type, even though technically I met the 3 product types and I met the right ratios of product types within the community. So if we do something like that here, I want to make sure that we really are doing product types if we want product type differences. I'm not a huge fan of restricting it like that. I let the developer decide. You guys.
You know,
I guess I like the idea of a percentage of, I'll give you an example of what is, I don't know what the percentage is. The development on the what's for the front half is townhouses. And the back, you know what I'm talking about. The back, I don't even call it back half. The back 2/3, back 3/4 is residential, single family homes. And I think they've done a fairly nice job of fairly attractive. So I think it depends too on the size of the property. I don't know if we can restrict. You know, to me, it makes a difference if you've got a 40-acre piece of property versus a 150-acre piece of property. 40 acres, I think you could go more restrictive on it being maybe one type of housing. If you got 150 acres, I think you've got to give a little bit more leeway as far as what can be built on there within the PRD, what we come up with.
Well, I guess the question is, do you want to demand a developer have these product types, multiple product types in development? Or do you want to say no? So, for example,
I think as a landowner, I would prefer that the contractor has more ways of developing the needs.
And not tell them that they have to have
Yes.
30% of this, 25% of that.
At the same point, I'd rather have it so there is a cap on like all the land can be developed in townhouses, like throughout.
And I could agree with that.
You know what I mean? So maybe not per development, but overall, I would not want to see 500 acres of
You
like,
can't.
so.
There's no way to do that in the PRD. You can't in the PRD say, oh, there's enough. We've already got too many townhouses in the property in the township. You can't build townhouses in this property. I see no way doing that.
other than if you had a limit on your development that you can only have, 60% as multifamily and 40%, single family, you could do that.
You can't. can do that, but that's on a project by project basis.
Correct.
I'm somewhat opposed to that from the standpoint of, I think it's awful nice to just build a townhouse community or just a single family community. But if you wanted to do something I would think at 40 acre size, you would not want to demand a development size. But if you do have that 150 acre development, it may make sense to have some kind of max of multifamily maxes out at X.
And I don't know, do we need to say, you know, it can't exceed 50% townhouses? Instead of saying 25% this way, 25 this way, 50 this way, we say you can't have more than 50% townhouses.
Yeah, but most of them would be rectangular. They would have to cap on a maximum of multifamily cap. And then the rest, it would be all single family, max out at 50% multifamily, and the rest single family. The whole thing could be single family. So it's normally always written.
I guess I'm just, you know, on my property, I would not, and I don't own it then at that time, and I hope that's a long ways down the road, but I really wouldn't want to see that all in townhouses. I could see some, I'd be okay with that, but whenever the time does come for I hope it's something that I can come back to in the afterlife and be happy with what they got there.
Well, other than the PRD, is there any case in there? Like, is there any way to restrict the development of this, like preventing it from all being townhomes, like all the way into like residential house?
No.
If there's not,
No,
then
not in township. You can't restrict it in the township. Right.
well, I would be in favor of limiting it by whatever size lot we decide on, limiting how many townhouses there can be on a 100 acre parcel that are both have to be residential. Now, I don't have a problem with smaller parcels. That's hard to restrict, like you said. Even a 40 acre parcel, you can't put in townhouses. Yeah. But I think we have to find a number that works where you're going to restrict how many townhouses can be on a 200 acre parcel. There has to be some residential, because like I said, the last thing I want to see is the whole town.
How is it, so they put in 6 8 townhouses, how's that compared to how many houses that is?
So it's a layered effect. Your first issue is you have overall density. Irregardless of its townhouses or single family homes, you're going to say you can't have more than, I think we kicked around 3.25 units per acre.
Is that the Wrigley?
That was Wrigley, and that's what the current ordinance in the mixed use area says.
That was for townhouses.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Okay.
So you have a limit of, that's your cap.
Okay.
So then you look at what's developable out of that. So say you've got 40 acres, you know, you're allowed 100 and some units. So, but maybe all of it's, or half of it's wetland. So now you get density, you still have the overall project density to meet. And the question is how you do that is really up to the development, what the site looks like, what the terrain is, whether they can do 2-story, 3-story, single family homes, you know. So you have the overall density is a restriction. And then you can potentially place that you can't have all townhomes. If it's 100 acres or more, you'd have to limit that to 50% townhomes, so then you have a mix. You know,
That's true, because that is the overriding determiner of how much land,
right.
what you can develop on a land for density. So I would just prefer that on a large parcel, there'd be some restriction on that. But like I said, it could be a pretty large parcel because the density determines it already.
Correct.
But it's a backup.
Right.
That's how I feel about it. So if it's a pretty large parcel, I don't want a restriction on how many, what percent of the townhomes.
You know what I think we should do? So if I look at the structure of the PRD, almost half of these documents are just procedural.
Yes.
Like what do you do? How do you apply? And there's only like 5 pages, and these two like offset each other a little bit. So there is that gap that we talked about, and the purpose is pretty clear. You know, that can be written anyway. But if we talk about the nuts and bolts, you know, you're talking about the density, you're talking about setbacks, you're talking about open space and the limitations of those, and so they're very common to a lot of the things we've already been looking at from these developers that come in and put front of us. We've discussed setbacks for townhomes, we've discussed a lot of these things. I'm wondering if we shouldn't go through the main top, you jumped right into the townhomes and the mixed use, but I think there's a lot of similarities here. I don't know why this was repealed, the Lancaster Township one. I don't know if we have history of that.
Some of it's political, but.
Yeah, but there's a little bit more teeth in the Lancaster one than the one that.
There is, but there's also in that one is more convolution.
There's convolution. But I'm thinking that there's main topics in the PRD. If we get those blocks talked through a little bit, it might help us advance the review of this. Or we can just go through the center one, because the center one starts with a purpose, and then it has a lot of procedural, and then the real meat of it is just the fact.
The real meat of it starts in basically number 6.
Yeah.
So there isn't much meat.
Right.
There really isn't much
I mean,
meat.
ultimately, you're looking at, is it all one style home or is it two? What size of lots? Again, the density is calculated, but then the question is, do you care percentage-wise of, they could put an 8,000 square foot lot in, so many of those, and what we've seen in other ones, it's less than 12,500, 12 to 17,000, anything above 17, you have prorated percentages, so you get a mix of small homes, small sites, bigger homes, and then you limit how many small homes, because obviously a developer may say, I want to put all 7,500 square foot lots in and make it, but again, the density is still the overriding factor. They can't say, well, we're going to put all in, we're going to do more density than is allowed. So you have that as a backup, so you have a layered effect. So the question is, do you want to allow them for the starter home, versus the single family retirement type facility? You want to migrate that in a plan and have facilities available for those types of things.
Yep.
On the proposal, 1.8%, it's basically looking at number 6 through 12. That's it. 2 pages. 2 pages have the entire content on it.
Yeah, and they're very matched up with the old Lancaster one, just
It is.
for a reference, back check. And I think they're pretty easy concepts.
They are. They're real easy concepts. And we can actually just ignore 1 through 5. Most of 1 through 5 is procedural and template. So if we want to just jump in right on number 6.
We'll have Bonnie write the procedural. Oh, no, council.
Well, most of the procedures are pretty much boilerplate. Even with requirement plans and all.
Well, it does
We're not
have.
even going to say some of this stuff because it's going to be part of the zoning anyway. And we don't have to say it. The core is going to be these types of pages that go into the final zoning ordinance.
Could you expand upon the product types? Your dream for what you think the product type should be for this PRD? I mean, these are great ideas. I think you touched on product types. I think those would be incorporated a lot in this one. I just read it quick. What is your dream for product types for the PRD? Would it be by zoning, resident, or zoning district? Would it be for the whole township as a whole?
My gut feel on the way PRD should be is actually pretty simple. You should take whatever the underlying zone is in PRD and say that defines your density. That or a multiplier, that defines your density. So if you've got 100 acres and you're an R1, say, and R1 is 1 unit per acre, 1 acre lots, that would define a density. If you want to leave the multiplier as 1, that's fine. If you want to change the multiplier to 2, that's a different discussion point. But you simply take a multiplier to the acreage to determine density. R2 would have a higher density. So it's 2 units an acre, or 4 units an acre, whatever. But it should all start from the fundamental underlying zone.
That's gross density,
So,
right?
gross density. And I do it off of gross.
That's excluding the open space.
It's total gross, all gross, including the roads to be dedicated. So you don't have to do the funny math of, oh my goodness, I've got 2 acres of roads, I do this. Just do a gross acreage density.
That's how Rivers does a lot.
Keep it simple. That's number 1. Product type. I don't really think you want to restrict product type too much. here, the way it's done is you have single family attached, single family detached, and facilities associated with those, and just keep it at that. If we were in a Wexford kind of area, I could see PRD also including things like commercial uses, having offices on the first floor, apartments on the second floor above. I don't know that we need to write that in now. I think we can let the next commission 10 years from now start to think about some of those things.
Yeah, I think
It's beyond where we're going to be in the next decade or more.
I think the original Lancaster one had up to 10% for that kind of retail dining. So it was kind of a mixed use there.
But I don't know that we need to go there yet, because we're not a township that's got high enough density to make those kind of projects, mixed commercial and residential all in one block, a viable thing right now. But no, I don't really look at it as restricting product types beyond what it says in front of it.
So you started out as a public entity, you were kind of intrigued me as would that be something that would be possible to do without restricting? I wanted to look at it just as I think we call you identify 3 different products.
What I was saying,
Yes.
okay, I was referring to the Adams Township small development model. And they have what they call a definition of, if you look up Adams Township site, you'll find that they've got traditional lots, neighborhood lots, suburban lots, estate lots, and then I think another, with a fifth kind of a lot. Each of those lots define the size. With a certain width of the lot or a certain, it's actually based on width of a lot. And their ordinance, and it's not a PRD ordinance, they also have a PRD ordinance separate. They have a development model, which is, I don't want to go there, we don't need that. And I don't think they need it. But it functions the same way. And the essence of that is they require a mix of 3 product types in this development model that we chose to use. But the development model doesn't specify the kind of product. It specifies the size of lot. And simply mixed the size of lot. I could put duplexes on everything and just change the width of the duplex and I get every other building a different size, so you have 25 feet between buildings or 22 feet or whatever it happens to be. And by drawing the lot lines right, it all works.
My original question was to you, if you could dream about it, because it sounds like you were kind of in favor of that, you use it for business, which you want to do. Would there be a product type, this much free space, this much, family activity area, this much, I don't know, boulevard, cul-de-sac,
If I were, number one, I would definitely mandate a certain percentage of green space. But
This one is 60.
even mandating it really doesn't matter much, because any developer making a decent use of the model is going to automatically do that anyway. We have to have it in there. It makes perfect sense. So I would definitely mandate some high number, 40+% green space to be gained. And beyond that, in terms of product type, I wouldn't go and specify that this is townhouses, this is single family, or this is duplex.
I don't even go there, sorry, I can't hear you. I'm just trying, because I bring up the super. The design, maybe Buffy, whatever that Buffy Road thing was too. Some of your plans can go there, I think it's really nice, so for me, incorporate some of those characteristics of these PRD as recommendations, maybe, suggestions, maybe.
No.
Oh, appreciate being blunt.
I'll put a draft.
Here's the trouble. When an engineer looks at a piece of property, they work on maximizing the number of lots they can get from the state. When I look at a property, I look at, obviously I want to have a high number and I want to keep that number high. But I look at the flow of the community, the way I can make the roads meander, and the streets.
That's why I asked the question.
But you can't mandate those things. Those are the problems.
You can suggest it, you can say, okay, here's our, I guess, what I was getting.
The suggestion is just that, suggestion.
Yeah, I don't have to.
You can look at it and say, so, to me, to take the time I took that, us to work on, we
2 years is worse.
Okay, so let's put, I'm sorry, Mike, but we're gonna get back on track here.
I just add one thing, the old Lancaster one said you can use 3 of those mixed, as single, detached or townhome. But if you do that, you have to have a minimum of 10% of one. You can't just put like one townhome here and have all that. So that gives you that uniformity, that blend, those kind of things. I think we need to.
I agree, and I do agree with that. If you're gonna have a mix, make sure there's enough of each mix, that it's not just a one-off. So I made 8 townhouse building here, that's.
And like garages can be ugly, right?
Piece of property, would you want all?
Do you want a back lot
Would
facing
you want
the
townhouse,
side?
duplex, and single family, can you just go to
Two of the 3 only one.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. If there's more than one type,
I noticed that.
no single type should have less than 10%. Not a bad number.
And then we have some buffer that we discussed too, that gives that beautification. We did all that buffer discussion.
We did, but that buffer is from this project to the next project. It's not internal to the project.
Right. But at least we have some sightline issues with.
But I do like that suggestion. If mixed,
Make sure there's something in.
and you think that's, I think 10% is a definite minimum.
I was thinking more like 20. Is that too much? I don't know. 10, I mean, 10. So on a 100-acre property is easy to picture. 100-acre property, you could have 100 homes on it.
You know, like an R1, yeah.
Okay, R1, so 20% would be 20 townhouses.
There are no less than 20 townhouses, 20 units.
20 units, so this, if you're going to have townhouses at all.
Yeah.
I like that. For some reason, I just like 20%.
You know, some of the.
I don't mind a 20% from me.
I think that way you make it more attractive.
I think we should define the common open space too.
I'm good with 20.
Yes, sir.
Is that 20% the count of townhouse buildings?
No, for units. Units.
So if you're 20, on an R1, 100-acre parcel, you can have, if you're going to have mixed, then you have to have these 20 townhouse units. Sure. 20. So not 20.
So back to 6A, permitted residential uses. We're going to keep this as residential only. Agree on that? Yep. So we have single family detached, single family semi-detached or duplex, single family attached.
What's a quadruplex? That's the.
Quadruplexes are quads, like Beaver's quads. Anyone see any issue with those product types?
Those are probably defined somewhere in our zoning anyways. Right?
They would be defined in the subdivision.
I'll be honest, I wrote the original draft for this, and I don't have a clue what semi-detached means. Do you have any idea, Tom? I don't have a clue what the semi-detached actually defines as.
Should just be.
Two houses next to each other on 2 acres.
Yeah, we just like to see a bridge pull out that half.
What's that?
It'd be like a pull out that half. So it's not duplex. Duplex, 2 and 1.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to understand that definition better.
Single family dwelling that shares one common wall. Each unit sits on its own distinct lot.
one that shares a common wall.
It's like a duplex.
That's no different than duplex.
Right.
So you have four duplex, so it's three. Okay. So semi-detached and duplex is the same thing.
It says there in some regions they're called twin homes, while structures, some of their duplex often feature two units owned by the exact same landlord, where some detachments individually use different terms. Parse that out, but that would be the.
Does anyone object to paragraph at the bottom of 6A in terms of form of ownership? What that means is that if you have a standard development, standard subdivision, things are owned each called fee simple. You buy this lot, it's half an acre, you buy half acre lot and a house on that. You own that half acre, including the ground and the house. Condominium ownership is different. Condominium ownership is you're only buying inside the walls of the unit. The rest of the ground around that property is owned in common by the whole community. I think it's actually important to have both forms of ownership responsibilities. Quads are notoriously difficult to go and do on fee simple. How do you own a quad fee simple? What ground do you own? How do you get to that ground through someone else's ground, etc. So, quads are often owned condominium style. But you can also own duplexes condominium style. You can also own single family units condominium style, where the HOA is responsible for all the maintenance, and then the COA, Condominium Association, is responsible for all the maintenance. So I think having both forms of ownership is a reasonable thing to do.
I agree.
We probably can't regulate that either.
What's that?
We can't zone that out.
You could say everything has to go into fee simple if you wanted to, but
It's the market condition, and how the development's set up. I don't know that you want to restrict it.
no, I don't think you want to. No. But I think you want to be clear that they're both allowed.
Yes, got a question. Is it, so on number, on A3, you got single family attached,
Yes.
townhouses, so should condominiums also be included in that, or is condominiums already?
Condominium is a type of ownership. It's not a property.
Okay.
Condominium is purely like ownership. When people talk about, boy, bought a condominium, they really mean they bought a product in a condominium kind of community. Condominium owner community. So B, accessory structure, auxiliary structures, I should say. I think that's clearly, you want to have those kinds of ability. And that could include tennis courts or anything else in that too, whatever.
Is there, the old one had a density bonus clause.
Correct. That's what I don't want to get into.
Okay.
I
thought
thought math
you
gets
did that.
complicated. Yes, I think the math just gets complicated.
And then I think the only thing about Stratford and Cole, they have like this general location standards, kind of a governing basic framework of PRD. I think it's kind of missing in this.
Where are you at on that one?
I'm back to a C on the other one. It just says the perimeter is a buffer yard of X feet. You know, it just defines what every PRD has to have. Kind of a general governance. And then you get into the permitted uses and get into the other depth of what makes sense to use. I'm thinking that this is kind of missing from the, and I don't know if it's necessary or not. It's just a common aspects of each PRD, irrespective of the design by the developer. And some of them are redundant, like streets have to be designed per our ordinances, which they're already mandated. you know if there's any of these that you can pull into kind of a header or
Well,
preamble,
for example, 2 and
or are
3,
they covered under the?
2 and 3 are gonna be covered in the ordinance itself, not in the PRD ordinance, that's already covered. Number 1 is a general comment, and we could certainly add a comment like that to it. But the problem is that's more of a suggestion. What's that really mean?
Okay, so the one that has the most teeth seems to be the buffer and the common space. They are all generalistic things, but they are suggestive.
I don't mind putting something like that in, that is suggestive.
Yeah, I think it shows a broader perspective on it and just says, you know, here, consider these when you're looking at these permitted uses and stuff.
I don't even mind number 1.
Yeah.
We could incorporate the essence of 1 and the essence of 4 into here. I have no problem with that. But they're more in the flavor, the overview flavor or suggestion.
Maybe we could create a draft with those kind of overarching and permitted uses.
Well, to be honest, I'm even willing to edit this.
Okay. Are you gonna do it?
Yeah. So I'm gonna incorporate it.
So I think the perimeter yard, you are right, is set back.
1 and 4. 2 and 3 are already covered by other pieces of our ordinance. See, 5 is, 5 gets into that fuzzy area. Existing utility right of way. Well, almost guaranteed you're gonna have right of ways, utility right of ways, like sewer easements or something else through some of these areas. I don't really want to convolute the map over the fact that there's a sewer line running through the common area that no one even knows is there.
Well, it's like the log cabins, you know, the roads, like going over that sewer in the back, look at that.
So I don't know that we want to have that level of, and then the street design standards, that's clearly going to be there.
Yeah, so these are just referential to things that already
Yeah,
exist.
all the rest of them already exist, but I don't
And
mind.
the bonuses, you don't want to do bonus things.
No, the bonus is, this whole bonus thing, that's what really got it. That's what really made it a mess in the existing ordinance.
Agreed.
It's much easier to keep it clean than.
Yeah.
Not like the car.
I just thought you those were kind of
Yeah, ordinance, yeah.
good preamble.
Nope, I think that's good. Accessory uses, private garages, parking areas, yes, garden storage sheds.
Now, do you want
We
to?
can expand, we can shrink, we can do whatever, and remember too that many HOAs will intentionally restrict some of these things further than this anyway. But if we want to allow something, certainly this is the opportunity we can have to put it in. I don't know that you want to restrict very much. Let the developer and his HOA decide how he wants to restrict. He doesn't want detached garages, if he doesn't want play sets. Let him say that in separation.
Yeah, the Lancaster one had provision to make 50% of the garages face the rear of the lot, which I don't understand that completely.
Oh, that's actually a nice one. Like that's if you're thinking of Venango Trails.
Yeah.
Venango Trails has rear load alleys that you can bring your parking in from the back. There's pros and cons to that. I don't want to do the convoluted math of this, but the biggest con with that is that's going to be a private road. It's not going to be township road. It's not going to be maintained well.
They do that in Columbus too.
And the other problem you have with it is now you don't have a front yard or a backyard to work with it.
I just thought that was
Especially
weird.
if it's a townhouse.
I don't think I've seen many backloaded garages in Lancaster Township. That basically block.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen them.
It's expensive to do. You typically get to do it off of an alley, which is yet another infrastructure component that's going to be built.
You want to include swimming pools as an accessory use?
We probably should. And swimming pools isn't a bad idea. Swimming pools and what are accessory, swimming pools are accessory structures or probably something like that?
This says the word use.
Swimming pool is definitely one we should list in there. And a developer could choose if this community's not gonna allow that, they're gonna have to go to the community pool. And that's fine, that's up to each developer what they wanna do. Well, exactly, yeah. I don't think we wanna get into that. Are you on the density?
So for our township, the R1 is one house per acre, correct?
Where we're at right now, it's 1 unit per acre.
If you had more.
Yeah, which you would definitely, oh, matter of fact,
What was the
PRD.
curative amendment?
PRD, we should definitely go and require them to have public water. If that's not mentioned, we should. Water and sewer. It's probably mentioned earlier. So, in our current, it's 1, and the R2 is 2 units, correct?
What was the
that
curative amendment? What was the next challenge that?
Excuse me?
The curative amendment?
Yes.
Didn't they increase the?
3.25 is the overall density. Again, your most is 0.5 for water and sewer available. That's township wide.
If a PRD requires building water and sewer,
Yes.
and water and sewer is gonna go someplace down to some main artery. What about properties that are not part of PRD that are in line between the PRD and the main artery? Are they gonna be required to add into the system?
No, the way it actually.
Or is the PRD gonna be responsible for paying for them?
No, neither. The way the law works is that it's up to the developer to secure easements to get through that property. If he cannot secure easements to get through that property, he can't get through that property. It's as simple as that. So that's purely on the developer. If he does not have sewer on his site, he cannot make the neighbor allow him to go through.
But if there's a public easement that runs down along the side of the road, and he uses that public easement, and he goes past the private house, it's not part of PRD, are they gonna be required to tie in?
Currently, the township does not have any such ordinance, do they?
The township code mandates that if you're within 150 feet of the sewer, you have to connect. That's a Pennsylvania township code requirement.
Okay.
So if it's along the road right of way and your house is 140 feet back, then you would be forced to connect. If your house is 160 feet back, you would not be forced to connect.
Something we have no control over.
That's correct.
Can I go back to the accessory use?
Sure.
Did you say that you wanted the things like storage sheds, greenhouses, fences, decks, patio gazebos, other recreational, do you want that to be at the HOA level? Is that what you're saying, Tom?
No, I'm saying.
Or should they be defined in our?
We can certainly add them here. If we want to allow those in as part of an individual unit owner's lot, sure, we can list some of those. At least examples of some of those. I don't know that we want to get into this restricting things, so that, I think if we want to list a more comprehensive list too, that's fine. No problem with that. But a developer may come along and say, no, he's developed these lots, it's very small, he does not want swimming pools, he does not want garages or sheds on them.
So we
And
wouldn't
he
see it in
builds
the
that,
plan.
and he builds that right into the declaration of community.
Yeah, so he can restrict that.
Yes, he can restrict it.
shrink.
Are fences something that has to be included in that?
So the fences you'll cover in your zoning ordinance, and we'll be changing that because of how it's currently defined and the restrictions associated with fencing, so, but it'll be in the master table that you have for zoning and fencing and where they're allowed, the heights they're allowed, how far off the property line they're allowed, stuff like that. That's already covered in this blanket zoning, and the PRD would then follow under that same zoning, so we're gonna put a fence up that would follow that requirement.
But if there's other things that we think we should add to the list, that's fine.
Yeah, I listed gazebo, tennis courts, pickleball courts, and to me, those are the things you'd want allowable in a PRD, and again, you'll get into more of those in your zoning table, so.
Okay. So back to density. I think what we want to do with density is actually not put a real number in either of those. I think we want to have it as a multiplier on the underlying zone's density and keep it simple. Personally, I think that number is either 1 or 2. It's either you multiply the density of the underlying zone, R1 being 1 per acre, to turn it into 1 unit per acre, or you use it as 2, or 2 units per acre in R1, 4 units per acre in R2. If where we end up in the zoning is 1 and 2, we have done that. But we just leave this as a multiplier on that number, and whatever that multiplier is.
Correct.
It's 1 and 2 now, for R1 and R2.
And you have,
So you basically want to multiply with 2.
Yeah.
I agree. That's why we wrote that. I think the multiplier of 2 makes sense.
Half acres are pretty.
For all zoning or just the R2?
For all zones, regardless. We just take an underlying zone. The underlying zone is 1 unit per acre.
Yep.
PRD is allowed to 2 times that.
Okay.
The underlying zone is 2 units per acre, you get 4 units per acre. Remember, you're still restricted by a lot of other things.
Oh, I know.
Amount of green space, all that kind of stuff.
So you are increasing the density. So how are you gonna make that cost? You're gonna have it, put it on the terms of, gross area, the multiplier?
It'll be a multiplier of 2 times whatever the underlying zone and maximum density is.
So then on a 100-acre parcel, a gross 100-acre parcel, you could have 200 homes.
Gross R1.
Yeah.
Parcel, yes. Gross R2 parcel would be 400.
So is the overarching
I-
driver for a PRD to enhance development?
The overarching,
To make it more attractive or something?
no, the overarching driving force is to cluster the infrastructure. When you cluster the infrastructure, you reduce your infrastructure and increase development costs and not disturb as much.
I got you.
That's the overriding
Land
research. Land protection, but it does it both ways. It protects the land, it improves aesthetics, but it also improves developer and landowner value because it's clustered these things pulled together tighter. I think PRDs are a huge win by clustering. You've got to keep enough of it open. You can't go and say, oh yeah, we can do that, so we can use every square inch of the property.
Question for the green space, you did mention it's not defined here in this PRD?
We'll get to that. If it's not here, we can add it.
Okay, it's not there, that's why.
If it's not there,
I don't see it.
It's called vegetative cover.
oh, okay.
It has a written term.
Where's that?
Number 12.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay.
But it's not like,
I wouldn't consider it vegetative.
Okay, so setbacks.
now we went through this a lot, right? Somewhere.
we did,
Because didn't we have different setbacks for different dwelling types?
we had, between the zone districts,
Oh.
commercial, residential, is where you dove into that.
This is where we're talking about the length of the driveway, right? To have two cars, we decide 30 feet, is that, do we decide what number that would be?
Well, we need to discuss that, because we will get pushback on the code. The 50 is easy, the 50 is a perimeter, so we want to keep that perimeter buffer.
Yeah.
But the setback off the public street on the front of the house, 30 is more. I think we're going to 25 feet on.
25. Yeah. That's a driveway, right?
Yeah, so that
wasn't
setback.
front. Yeah.
25 setback, plus you still have another basically 12 feet from there to the street, but only 5 more feet from there to the sidewalk. So here you'd have 30 feet plus 12 and a half feet to the road. So you're by 42 feet, you can still be 35 feet to the sidewalk, basically. The question is, we've already allowed less than 30. Are we wanting to put a line in the sand and say, no, going forward, it's going to be 30 minutes, we will have some fairness.
And we're gonna require a sidewalk here
Sidewalks will be required, yes. But sidewalks are required
on both sides of the street.
That's another thing to discuss. So setbacks, what are your thoughts?
And currently what we have, the requirement now, if we have one?
Currently, your setbacks in your front are 50-foot minimum on a regular lot is what it is, R1, R2,
That's front to front.
front yard.
Matt, what do you have in your
25, 30.
As you say, you're probably 25 foot.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that this is a zoning ordinance change, so if they need a variance, it's a zoning hearing board. It changes it, not the supervisors. So,
So it's 30 seems reasonable, or seems not? I don't see what you're thinking.
I think it's reasonable. I think 25 is on the low end of the line. And I know trails went the whole way down to like 15 feet.
So, a question here, on the comp committee, if I recall right, we talked about allowing 4 houses per acre. Is that?
4 per acre is that density 40%.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 times.
To put 4 houses on that one, what feet do we need to make?
Oh, any of them will work. So a quarter acre lot is still a pretty big lot.
Okay.
So you don't have any problem meeting these
The 30 feet or the 40 feet, okay, okay.
Where you'll end up with problems is you're gonna start doing the 5th acre or less, and you start having topography issues. That's what they meant. Topography issues that just didn't give you enough depth to make everything work.
So are these provisioned on independent of the dwelling type? These are all universal.
We'll get to those in a minute.
Oh,
We're talking back here in the previous page.
I'm sorry.
So 30 feet enough to put 2 cars in, right? Typically.
yeah, again, Arden and the Wrigley plan had 25 foot from the edge of the right of way to the garage. So, and it's
Is that
doable, but
Does
it's,
it work on the sidewalk though?
well, that was the
25 is easy to
question.
do one.
Right.
You can still do one easily. 30, you still can't. That's
If
just
we
too
make
small.
it 30 feet, and the contractor wants it to be 50, that's his.
Oh, we can certainly do that, it's the minimum.
Yep.
That's not gonna be the issue. The issue is if you want to say 25.
Okay. What did we do? Wrigley development, that's 25?
We went to 25, but they did that to the cure of the minimum, didn't they?
Yes.
Is 30 a reasonable number?
30 is a very reasonable number. I just want to know if we want to draw that line in the sand.
What did, was it Tony that mentioned in a comment that he went to that plan, the townhome plan on, Seneca Hills?
Seneca Hills.
What was the, he said the setback was farther, right?
That's in the middle of the road.
but it's only 20, I think it's only 20 feet.
Okay.
It's
And I think what you were
misleading,
saying was for the middle.
but
You get down
realistically,
and
it's
look
only
at it,
20 feet.
it's.
Okay. I thought he was indicating it was much
It,
farther
it,
than
it
Hardwood.
looks wider, but it's really only 20 feet.
I'm okay with it.
You have a recommendation, Tom?
I mean, we've seen 25 be accepted, and again, a PRD, to me, they're gonna be looking for smaller, which we haven't gotten the side yards, but probably stacking those closer to the road as well. So a developer would ask it for 25. And that's their standard. I don't have a problem going to 30, but I'm just saying, you're gonna get pushback that they're gonna wanna see 25.
So you're saying if they ask for 25, it's not gonna be a waiver request, it's gonna be a variance?
Because it's a zoning ordinance, it's not subdivision. They did a subdivision plan that wasn't a PRD, they could ask for 25. PRD, they'd have to go to the zoning hearing board, and chances are there wouldn't be a hardship to be able to go to 25. Unless there was a terrain issue, potentially there could be, but it's.
But that it's a self-induced issue,
Right.
For the design, so
Correct.
they're not gonna be able to demonstrate hardship.
It's more of a, you gotta do it right the first time because there's no forgiveness. The regular ordinance and subdivision ordinance, you have leeway.
Personally, I can go either way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter for cars, like if you could fit 2 cars is what I prefer, but it doesn't.
So with the 25 feet, Tom, you probably have less pushback from contractors.
Oh, you wouldn't, yeah, they wouldn't, there may be some that would wanna go to 20 feet, to me, you'd never go to 20. 25 would be the absolute minimum.
I'm guess I'm just looking to not have, we gotta waste time, our time, the township's time, whatever. If we make it 30, they want 25.
So you're recommending go 25 and not there?
And that includes the street right away, or is it from the street right
From
away?
the street right of way to the front of the garage, or the front of the house.
I'm just trying to move for this.
So even at 25 feet, you're still about 28 feet off the sidewalk. So you can easily work 8 parking.
Well, I got a question about another idea we have, and this is more directed to the solicitor. You had spoken in the past about staggering steps, since we're talking about setbacks. Is there any legal implication requiring staggering setbacks?
I've never seen it before.
It just looks so nice.
I've never seen staggered setback requirements either.
Okay.
When I've done it, I've intentionally done it.
Okay.
Gotta
How
curve
we
the
did it,
road.
it's a nice look.
It is a nice.
Somehow, as you guys are in this stage, as a planning commission, can we request that? Let's say, house setback, for certain types of units, a lot of times, whatever you want to call it, we have staggered setbacks. I'm just not gonna do that. Townhouses, we're gonna do lots of townhouses. Lots of 6, and then setback. I just, the appeal curve is nice.
It is, but we're gonna keep going on. Oh, I gotta make comments at the end. I don't wanna restrict you too much though, but,
That's okay.
it's not a bad idea. I have personally done it. We've personally done it, but it's not something we can mandate. Okay, well, we could mandate, I've just never seen it.
So does he have to change 25 feet then too? Section E, whatever it is.
It's where at? Oh,
Top there.
okay, what do you think of paragraph B to begin with?
For the example.
An example of that is, I've actually built developments before where you take the sidewalk, and instead of having it follow right 5 feet off of the road,
Yeah.
put it 20 feet off the road.
Yeah.
Put some trees in the middle between, so you're walking,
Yeah, so you have
more
that.
aesthetically
Yeah.
pleasing. And in that case, what it's saying is, okay, you still need to go from that sidewalk, you still have to be set back line, you can park your vehicle on that. The reality is, there'll be a lot of pushback on that, an awful lot of pushback on that requirement. But I actually don't though, because no one's gonna put the sidewalk outside the right away.
They're gonna put it on common ground, so
Good
it
work.
could be in the buffer, or it could be off the road, but it's gonna be in the right of way irregardless.
Well, it will be, will be in a right of way, for sure it'll be in the right of way, but not just have the road right.
Right.
So do we wanna have the requirement that if it doesn't hurt, any developer that's trying to maximize their buck is gonna never put the sidewalk outside the road right away anyway.
Right.
So that's the case, you change this from the 25 to 3.
I'm cool with that.
You want a side yard setback. This one doesn't mention side yard setback.
This one has, we'll get to that in 11, number 11,
Okay.
when we get to there. Height of structures. Are we 35 feet in our current ordinances?
3 stories, 35 feet.
That's the peak of roof. Does 35 cut it? I butt up against that several times.
The R2 is currently 4 stories, and it only lists 4 stories. It doesn't list feet.
So at least 40 feet.
What do we want to list?
I think you should go feet, not stories.
The R1 now is townhomes and duplexes are 35 feet, apartments are 4 stories, and there's really nothing on single families. But again, to me, you're gonna pull this into a table in your zoning and say R1, your height's this. R2, so you have it all in one area. So you could skip the PRD section of making a height and just have the overlying district defined.
And that would be defined in that zoning district by product type.
Yes. Because if we're gonna have one list, you have all the zones so that there's no question of what is it in this zone versus that zone. They may be all the same, they may be restricted, but to me, if you're gonna do that, you don't need it in the PRD.
That makes sense to me.
I think that makes a lot more sense. Put it there.
You know, a lot of times, if you want it a little higher, they require you to set it back from the street, right? When some things I've seen.
One of the problems with always measuring this is where do you measure it from?
Right.
Because you need to have a very good definition of where you measure from, especially if you've got.
Who's gonna check it? Our zoning?
Well, the way it's typically done is you look at the plan, and the plan will give you a dimension, but that dimension is off of what? If your grade is changing, it's a difficult thing to know where to measure from. So it has to be well defined. Number 10, a PRD. What's the minimum size of open ground to do a PRD? And again, these are things that we can pull into a table too.
You could.
What's the smallest you can?
I think 25 acres makes sense. You don't want to get into the 10-acre range. It's just, by the time you take 10 acres, you try to carve off common space, carve off storm sewer space. What do you have left to do much? Leave it at 25? Okay, now we'll get to what you were talking about, is interior yards. This one here, we can, this is open for discussion. There's two ways of looking at spacing. This spacing was done unit to unit spacing, building to building, either front to back, front to side, front to rear. A whole table of different spacing you require between the buildings. That's a little different than the setback. The setback is an absolute property line to the building. Pros and cons. If you did this in a condo ownership unit, there is no property. So you have nothing to measure off of. So you simply have something measure on it. So sideline setback makes sense. If you're in condo ownership, the only thing you have to measure from is where's the next building. So building space doesn't matter. I wrote it as building space, and for that reason, it covers both. The downside of doing this is that you could shift your building close to one edge of the lot and screw the next one over. That's the real danger in doing this.
Yeah, it's a common thing that we see in the PRD is that the side yard will be, say, 15 feet with a minimum of 5. So one side could be 5, one side could be 10, you could do 7.5 on either side. So depending on terrain, if you have a storm sewer running down, you could shift it, but it's really only going to shift a couple of feet one way or the other.
But the problem with that is it still doesn't do a condo ownership.
Right.
It doesn't address the zones. Quads are perfect example.
Cool.
You don't have a sideline on a quad.
We separate the two, like have one for condos, one for fee simple, one for condo situations.
Certainly can. We certainly could have this section have criteria like this if the form of ownership is condo.
Put a table in and single family condo style and populate.
And then you turn this into essentially in terms of setbacks, you can just use your normal side front rear kind of setback table for fee simple, and use this for condo. I think that makes sense.
Do you would a graphic help there at all, or is that just redundant? Showing what the dimension is. Or is that because you have slanted lines and stuff?
Every time I think of a graphic, I think of the graphic that we have in the current stuff that has the interior lots, like A, B, C, D, kind of lot type. And everyone scratches their head and says, what does this mean?
Forget it.
No, it doesn't make sense because here we define all the kinds of condo ownership dimensions, but things aren't as simple as this. You know, if you're at a 44-degree angle versus a 46-degree angle, it changes which number you look at. It's not black and white.
We'll let that answer.
So we're going to add a setback table.
If you go back to 10 for 1 second, should we add the word, my attorney word for the day, is contiguous acreage instead of just 25 acres?
Oh, I agree.
So what if, you have a 15 acre and a 10, you say, 25 acres, the whole road in between?
Yes, it should be. No question. And I think we're going to let's talk about number 12, and then I think we'll just
That's it.
Because the rest is a lot of boilerplate. Then we'll take a draft. I'll edit this, but probably not by Monday. So we can do that on Monday. So vegetative cover. I do think that I don't like the way this is written. This is definitely way too fuzzy. The problem with this is shall be maintained vegetative material. So, okay, what kind of people are just all of a sudden we can build it everything. So we don't want that. We want this to be dedicated.
Here's kind of the way I was looking at it. So if we've got 100 acres, 100 acre parcel, if it would be R2, you could put 4 units per acre. Okay. So that would be 4, am I right? Okay. 400 units. So on that 100 acre parcel, there's no way you can put 400 units on. Because if it's a quarter acre per unit.
Oh, it's not a quarter acre per. You got to count on that.
Okay.
So you could go and.
Okay.
But you're still not going to get that.
No, I got that. To me, 40 is a little high. I think 30 is too low. I like the number 35.
30% green space.
Green space on the gross acreage. Now, my question to you, let's say it's on Starbridge Road, we have a setback. Is that included as green space? What about the roads then? Is that included as green?
Okay, that's what we have to define. If this is fee simple, and it's owned the whole way, if people own the whole way to Route 19, none of that counts, if they own it. So the code fee simple is common areas outside of the way. I'm not hung up with whether it's 35 or 40% myself. I think that the number should be, it should not include storm facilities. It should include what the actual common areas are, whether it's native woods or playgrounds, those all count. But don't count all the storm facilities as well. I don't know exactly how to.
So Lancaster Townships, they do it kind of reverse. They say you can have a maximum of residential development, and then everything else is kind of the open space. It's green, and it's a little high.
Where are you at?
I'm on their number 6 of the site area limitations. Now they say 75% for residential use. That includes streets, private open spaces. But when they go to the open air recreational or green space, it's fuzzier. Because I think most people when they hear, undeveloped land, vegetative cover, green space, they think like, you can't do anything. You're just gonna leave that alone. But I think some ordinances have a little bit of flexibility there because you have open air space for the use by all residents.
I like,
It gets a little fuzzy in there.
there could be some property where you could put in bike trails for people, hiking trails for people.
I know
It would be part of the green space.
like you probably remember when Cranberry said 25% has to be green space for all the rest, and then Viola cut down all his trees, and so he said, okay, I'm gonna cut down all my trees. Now I got that's open space, so I can't preserve something that's been cut down.
I think also, I think you have to have, whatever the line is, it needs to be usable space, like, place for the building, asphalt, walking trail, bike trail. Can't be somebody say, oh, this channel's free stormwater runoff.
No, I don't know if it's, but there's gonna be property like it's not.
Developable.
The native wetlands, the native wetlands on the property, the wooded hillside, that all should count.
I know it counts, but you were saying that you can use it for some. Some of it.
Residents is more to do, I think. It has to be, I think that's what Paul said, it has to be accessible. Right?
Yeah. I'm strong like.
Well, the old thing had open air recreational uses and then a green, green space. And the open air was 20% and the green was 10. I'd rather have it 10 to 20.
Well,
I want that green.
let me complicate this a little bit. I don't think we're gonna finish this one tonight.
No, that's what we're talking.
This was one we're gonna have to think about some more, but let me throw some more fuel on the fire to think about. It matters whether it's fee simple or condo as well.
Sure.
If it's fee simple, you can easily calculate those areas because what's owned by an HOA at the end of the day. There's property owned by them and they're not building on it. It's owned by the HOA, you subtract out the ponds and boom, this is what you have left. You've got some real math. If it's condo, they own the whole 100 acres you know. So how do you regulate and make sure that the condo keeps certain portions of this green, whether it's wooded or playground, they both count. They may have different proportions, but they both are part of that green space. You need to be able to have a metric that the condo has to adhere to. it work. It's harder to calculate than pieces.
That makes sense.
Well, it does. And you may have two standards or one way to define it so you can control it.
Yes, we have to define it. I think it's important to define. I think you want to have some numbers, but you want to have a definition of how you're going to define that. It's easy to define on a HOA, much more difficult on a condo. And I think that since we won't finish this tonight, let's think about that. So at this point, I will open it up for public comments once again.
Couple things. On number 8A, it says all structures shall have a setback of not less than 50 feet from all corner property lines to the PRD tract. That should be, as myself as family friends have been affected by this directly, it should be a minimum of 100 to 200 feet, not 50. That's why 50 feet is supposed to be that. It causes all kinds of problems for those neighbors. Because the way people are so disrespectful and everything nowadays is ridiculous. And then the vegetative cover, green space that you were talking. For the comprehensive plan, you were saying a minimum of 40%, maybe 50 or 60.
No, I thought we talked 30.
No, we said 40% minimum. We said 40.
I don't recall that.
Yes, every time I was not running the money, we said 40% minimum. And some of us were running 50, maybe 60 because to keep the rural community feel. That's why people have moved here is for that point. And so many people were upset, between Arms and Scenic, but really now they're blowing hot down a lot. They're starting 24 townhouses next to the log cabin. And I'm not just talking residents, I'm talking people from outside Spain, out of state, that have come back to visit. And their heads are splitting between that all the other townhouses in the county. Because they all look like Section 8 housing. So yeah, it's just something to think about. We're a rural community, we need to stay look that way. Not look like Granby, not look like Jackson Township, and everything else.
Any other comments?
Yeah, just real quick, just reiterate the importance of the data center ordinance, whatever you have, is something better than nothing. So we get one. And I did do some research on the PRDs. One thing about PRDs is kind of, I know you really like PRDs, I do, I think we I thought we were a lot further on our ideas, I'm very similar, but with PRDs, you have huge ability to change things from your zone based on the law. If you come to this PRD, there are townships that do in fact have very setbacks. So now, AI something on salt, but in Pennsylvania, second class townships, you have very setbacks. You have in the PRD, you can do all kinds of things outside of that. This is huge for the township, I think. Whatever the green space is, however you have a lot of need, take what you can, which you're doing.
Ron, do you have any comments? You know what left?
I have comments about the data center should be priced. Not discussing that, I think,
Yeah, that's most likely, it's not gonna be the next meeting, but it will be next meeting after that, about a month from now. When we'll be much more involved in that. Yeah, and end of July, I would think that's gonna be in front of us, right?
Well, we're requesting that the finalized version be in front of the supervisors.
Well, understood, but we're not gonna act on anything until we get the director to act. That's just the way it's supposed to be.
No, I know, like I said, I did give you a heads up, as a courtesy, it's coming.
Yep. But to answer your question, I think anything we put together is gonna be better than nothing. And it's very fixable, because whatever we do is gonna be incorporating the changes into the zoning ordinance we're already working on. So we'll get a little bit of track record under our feet, if we can tweak it during the zoning adjustments. So I'm not panicked about the zoning ordinance. I heard the data center ordinance. I think it's gonna be simple to get through the something more.
And you are gonna put on the workshop. Workshops are meetings also. Will be put on at.
I'm not panicked about the concept either. There's just a few things that I want to point out that I think should be considered.
Well, if you want to mention now, that's fine. Kind of tough.
Or the board of supervisors workshop. The board of supervisors workshop. These guys are the ones that draw.
Yeah, we're gonna end up drawing out, so if you just wanted to tell us some of your ideas, that's fine.
All right, we have three basic ones. They should provide their own electricity.
That's in the current draft.
If they're using water, it should be a one-time draw and recirculate. If noise is an issue, they should do something like what the gas wells did, some kind of a buffer around this to help suppress that noise. Those are my biggies.
Those are good ones. Those are in the draft.
Is the total noise in there too, the EBC, the EBC? Is the total noise in that draft as well, the EBC?
We do have
It's
noise
actually
levels
pretty-
in there, but
Pretty detailed.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. But I don't know if you read the paper, but I think for Rain Township, they just put a moratorium. They want to study water consumption in their township before they let any data centers in. So they want to understand, because I just read a story that Google built a data center near Dallas, and they're using 40% of Dallas's water supply. One data point.
Look out west, with that.
So water's a big deal.
Then it comes out with the same issue.
And the good news about this township, we don't have a lot of space for them to build data centers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's unfortunate, I mean, for the developers, fortunately for us, that we really don't have a lot of place to put that scale of a building.
A lot of people, they're actually putting a lot of, crypto mining data centers, which are your ASICs and not your GPUs. They're the noisiest ones, and they're using, shipping containers, small warehouses. And they're still extremely noisy